Fall Asleep Episode 5. Tonight we will be covering a story requested by one of my followers. There are some athletes whose stories are larger than the games they play, whose smiles light up cities, whose presence seems to make the pressure disappear. Tonight we drift into the story of one of those athletes, a man who came from humble beginnings in the Dominican Republic, who carried an entire city through heartbreak and triumph, and did it all with a bat in his hands and joy in his heart. This is the story of David Ortiz. You might know him as Big Papi, the towering designated hitter with the easy laugh, the walk-off swing, and the uncanny ability to make time stop when the game was on the line. But his journey wasn't always easy. It's a tale of perseverance and personality, of rejection and redemption, of home runs that lifted curses, and words that helped heal wounds. So close your eyes, let the noise of the day fade away, and fall asleep to the story of a man who became a legend, not just for what he did on the field, but for what he meant off of it. This is the story of the walk-off king, the city's hero, Big Papi. Chapter 1, Born to Hit. Long before the roar of Fenway Park, before the walk-offs, the championships, the chants of Papi echoing through the night, David Ortiz was just a boy with a dream, growing up in the heart of Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. Born David Americo Ortiz Arias on November 18, 1975, he was the eldest of 4 children in a modest, hard-working family. The neighborhood was a challenging one, a place where poverty and crime were ever present. As he once described it, when you grow up in the Dominican, food is a special thing. When you're hungry as a kid, you might throw rocks and knock down coconuts. You might climb a mango tree. Every real meal you get is special. His parents, Enrique Leo Ortiz and Angela Rosa Arias, worked tirelessly to provide for their children. His father, Leo, was a car mechanic who had played baseball professionally in the Dominican Republic. He was the one who nurtured David's love for the game, starting with unconventional methods. Leo often provided David with his first batting practice, a broomstick and a baby doll head. As Ortiz famously recounted, he had read that his idol, Pedro Martinez, had done the same thing as a child. He absorbed his father's lessons, later reflecting, "I just swing hard all the time. That's what I've done my whole life, hit." His father's belief was unwavering. In a later interview, Leo said, "I knew if someone was going to get a hit, it was going to be David." His mother, Angela, was the family's compassionate and moral center. She worked tirelessly, even taking on side jobs to provide for her children. "My mom, she wasn't like a baseball mother who knew everything about the game," Ortiz would remember. "She just wanted me to be happy with what I was doing." Even as a child, David's raw talent was undeniable. He was a 2-sport standout in both baseball and basketball at his high school, but baseball was his true passion. His powerful build and natural strength caught the attention of local trainers and scouts. The man who truly discovered him was Ramon de Los Santos, a scout for the Seattle Mariners. He had heard about a strong kid with a powerful swing and went to a training ground in Santo Domingo to see for himself. What scouts like de Los Santos saw was raw, undeniable potential and immense power in his swing. De Los Santos was so impressed that he signed the 17-year-old Ortiz on November 28, 1992. There was a mix-up with the paperwork. The Mariner staff, unfamiliar with the country's naming conventions, mistakenly listed him as David Arias after his mother's last name. But for David, it was a minor detail. He was just grateful for the chance. He was on a path to use baseball as a bridge between where he was and where he could go. He was a long way from the big leagues, but in that moment, the boy with the powerful swing from the dusty streets of Santo Domingo knew his life had changed forever. Chapter 2, The Long Road to Boston. Ortiz had signed with the Seattle Mariners at just 17 years old, and soon after, he left the warmth of the Dominican sun for the unfamiliar, often isolating world of minor league baseball in the United States. He started in the Dominican Summer League, then made his way to the Arizona Rookie League. By 1996, he had advanced to the Midwest League with the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers, where the air was cold and the crowds were sparse. Still just a teenager, Ortiz was adjusting not only to professional baseball, but to a new culture, a new language, and a life far from home. But he hit. Everywhere he went, he hit. That year, he put up impressive numbers in Class A, batting .322 with 18 homers and 93 RBI. Coaches marveled at his raw power. Even back then, the ball sounded different off his bat. And yet, just 4 years after signing him, Seattle decided he wasn't part of their future. In 1996, the Mariners were chasing a playoff spot. They needed a veteran third baseman for the stretch run, so they struck a deal with the Minnesota Twins to acquire Dave Hollins. The price? A player to be named later. That player was David Ortiz, a throw-in, an afterthought, traded away before he ever got a chance to wear a Seattle uniform in the majors. Just like that, the Mariners were done with him. And David Ortiz became property of the Minnesota Twins. Minnesota was supposed to be the place where he'd grow roots, but it never quite worked out that way. He debuted in the majors on September 2, 1997, at just 21 years old. Big frame, big swing, big potential. But the Twins were conservative, a small market team with little patience for risk. As one of their managers, Tom Kelly, once noted, he valued defense and avoiding strikeouts, and Ortiz wasn't amazing at either of those parts of his game. The organization questioned his glove at first base, worried about his strikeouts, and never fully bought in. Over the next 6 seasons, Ortiz bounced between the majors and AAA. One week he'd be raking in the big leagues. The next he'd be back on a bus in the minors. It was a frustrating cycle. Injuries didn't help. He battled wrist and knee issues that stunted his development and led to him having multiple surgeries. But mostly it was about opportunity, and Ortiz never felt like he had a fair one. As one source noted, a lack of consistent playing time stunted him a bit. Still, he made the most of his chances. In 2002, his final year with the Twins, he finally stayed healthy. He hit 20 home runs in just 125 games, drove in 75 runs, and showed glimpses of the slugger he would one day become. But Minnesota had already made up its mind. That winter they non-tendered him, meaning they let him go rather than give him a raise in arbitration. The decision, according to then general manager Terry Ryan, was not just about saving money but was a very bad baseball decision, based on the belief that they had better options. The Twins, for the record, saved about $1.05 million by letting him go. David Ortiz was expendable. He was 27 years old, unemployed, and for the first time in his career, unsure if baseball still wanted him. In his words, "When I came into that Fenway locker room in 2003, I was desperate. For real. I was 27 years old. I had just been released by the Twins. I didn't even know if I'd finished the season with the Red Sox. There were no parades, no bidding wars, just a few phone calls, and then a crucial one from Boston. It was an offer pushed for by his friend and countryman, Pedro Martinez, who had been calling team officials to get them to sign him. The result was a quiet, one-year offer for $1.25 million. No guarantees, no starting spot. Just a sliver of hope. But sometimes that's all it takes. David Ortiz packed his bags and headed east, leaving behind years of waiting, and walking into a city cursed by history, desperate for a hero. He was done being forgotten. He was ready to become unforgettable. Chapter 3: Becoming Big Papi. Boston didn't know it yet, but their baseball history was about to change. When David Ortiz arrived at spring training in 2003, he wasn't a star. He wasn't even a starter. He was just another name on the roster. A one-year contract. A backup. Maybe. The Red Sox already had players ahead of him on the depth chart, most notably Jeremy Giambi, a left-handed hitter with major league experience. Ortiz wasn't expected to compete for much more than a pinch-hitting role. But there was something different about him. A presence, a calm confidence, a swing that made people stop and stare. Still, in classic Ortiz fashion, he had to wait. He didn't make his first start at designated hitter until late April. He didn't hit his first home run until a marathon game in Anaheim on April 27, 2003, in the 14th inning. But once the summer heat arrived, so did Big Papi. In June and July, Ortiz caught fire. He mashed home runs, drove in runs in bunches, and delivered when it mattered most. By August, he was a staple in the middle of the Red Sox lineup. By September, he was a fan favorite. And by October, he was Big Papi. The nickname had started in the clubhouse. As he explained it, "I meet so many people every day, it's hard for me to keep up with their names. So I just Papi people." It was a reflection of his warmth, his swagger, and his habit of calling everyone Papi. Soon enough, teammates flipped it on him. "You're the real Papi," they joked. The name truly took hold when legendary Red Sox broadcaster Jerry Remy began using it on the air, adding the big to reflect his imposing size and the massive success he was having at the plate. And the name stuck. Forever. Ortiz finished the 2003 regular season with a .288 batting average, 31 home runs, and 101 RBIs in just 128 games. This dominant performance earned him a fifth-place finish in the American League MVP voting. But his true legend would begin in the postseason. The 2003 ALDS against the Oakland A's brought the first taste of his October magic. Ortiz launched a dramatic two-run home run in the 8th inning of Game 4, helping the Red Sox come back from a 2-0 series deficit to force a decisive Game 5, which they would go on to win. Then came the ALCS against the Yankees. 7 games of drama, heartbreak, and history. Ortiz hit .269 in the series, including 2 home runs. But it wasn't enough. In a dramatic Game 7 at Yankee Stadium, the Red Sox held a late lead, but the bullpen faltered. With the game tied in the bottom of the 11th, Aaron Boone swung, and Boston's hopes crumbled. Ortiz, like everyone else in that dugout, was devastated. So close, and still so far from ending the curse. But something had shifted that year. For the first time in decades, Boston fans believed. And at the center of that belief, the symbol of the new era, was a man with a giant grin, a bigger heart, and a bat that felt like destiny every time it touched the ball. David Ortiz hadn't just found a team. He had found his place, his city, his people. And in the heartbreak of 2003, the legend of Big Papi was only beginning. Chapter 4: Breaking the Curse. Boston had known heartbreak for generations. 95 years without a championship. The curse of the Bambino. Bucky Dent, Bill Buckner, Aaron Boone. But in 2004, something felt different. It wasn't just talent, though the Red Sox had plenty. It was belief. And at the center of that belief stood a man who had once been cast aside. A man now known across the city as Big Papi. The regular season was strong. Ortiz picked up right where he left off, slugging 41 home runs, driving in 139 runs, and finishing second in AL MVP voting behind Vladimir Guerrero. He was now the heart of the lineup, and the heart of the team. But it was in October that his legacy would be carved in stone. The 2004 ALDS against the Angels was Ortiz's stage. In Game 3, with the Red Sox up 2-0 in the series and the game tied in the 10th inning, Ortiz stepped to the plate. The crowd at Fenway was on edge, tense, hoping, waiting. And then he crushed it. A walk-off, 2-run home run over the Green Monster. Red Sox win. Sweep complete. But that was just the opening act. Then came the Yankees, the rival, the giant. The ghost of 2003 still fresh. The ALCS began badly. Boston dropped Game 1, then Game 2, then got blown out in a demoralizing Game 3, a 19-8 humiliation at Fenway. The Yankees were celebrating a third straight win on the Red Sox home field, chanting and gloating. No team had ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in a best-of-7 series. The Red Sox were finished, or so it seemed. The mood was dire. With the team on the brink, Kevin Miller famously declared to the media, "Don't let us win tonight." It was a rallying cry that spoke to the slim hope that remained. Game 4. That hope nearly died. Down 4-3 in the ninth, 3 outs away from elimination, Boston was facing the greatest closer of all time, Mariano Rivera. With no one on and 1 out, Kevin Miller drew a walk. Manager Terry Francona sent in the lightning-quick Dave Roberts to pinch run. As Ortiz later recounted, everyone in the dugout knew Roberts was going. On the very first pitch, he stole second base, beating Jorge Posada's throw by a hair. The stadium erupted. With a tying run in scoring position, Bill Mueller singled him home. The game was tied. The Yankees were in shock. But the night was far from over. The game stretched on past midnight into the 12th inning. With a runner on, Ortiz came to the plate. He remembered his previous at-bats against Yankees reliever Paul Quantrill, and he knew what was coming. "I said, okay, throw it now. I ain't going to miss it this time." On a 2-1 count, Quantrill threw a sinker, and Ortiz annihilated it. A walk-off 2-run homer that sent Fenway into an absolute frenzy. The Red Sox had survived. The series was 3-1. Game 5. Another marathon. Another do-or-die moment. The teams battled for 13 innings with the game tied 4-4. With the clock ticking toward 1:30 a.m., Ortiz stepped up to the plate in the 14th inning with runners on first and second. After a grueling 10-pitch at-bat against Esteban Loaiza, he slapped a walk-off single to center field, scoring Johnny Damon. Red Sox win. The series was now 3-2. As Joe Buck exclaimed on the broadcast, "Damon is running to the plate and he can keep on running to New York." Game 6. The series shifted back to the Bronx and Boston brought the momentum with them. On the mound was Curt Schilling, who had torn a tendon sheath in his ankle in the ALDS. In a desperate, one-of-a-kind procedure, Red Sox Dr. Bill Morgan stitched his skin and tissue together to stabilize the injury. As Schilling pitched, blood visibly seeped through his sock, a gruesome symbol of the team's gritty determination. He gutted out 7 innings of 1-run baseball in a hostile environment, silencing Yankee Stadium and securing a 4-2 win. The series was tied. Game 7. What had been unthinkable was now within reach. The Yankees and Red Sox were tied, 3-3, with the fate of the curse coming down to a single game in the house that Ruth built. The game wasn't close. The Red Sox crushed all hope early. David Ortiz hit a 2-run homer in the first inning. Then Johnny Damon hit a grand slam in the second, sealing the comeback and leaving Yankee Stadium in stunned silence. The Red Sox won 10-3, completing the most improbable comeback in sports history. The World Series that followed felt almost easy by comparison. The Red Sox swept the St. Louis Cardinals in 4 straight games. Ortiz homered in Game 1, drove in 4 runs, and batted .308 for the series. As the final out settled into the glove of first baseman Doug Minkiewicz, the Red Sox poured onto the field in jubilation. Fans cried. Decades of heartbreak melted into joy. And in the center of it all, the man who started 2003 as a backup, now a legend. The curse was broken. Boston was reborn. And Big Papi was eternal. Chapter 5. The Hero of Boston. The curse was over, but David Ortiz was just getting started. In the years that followed, Big Papi didn't fade. He rose higher. From 2004 through the end of the decade, Ortiz became not only the most feared designated hitter in baseball, but the heart and soul of the Red Sox. He made 5 straight All-Star appearances from 2004 to 2008. He hit 47 home runs in 2005, leading the majors with 148 RBI. In 2006, he hit 54 home runs, breaking Jimmy Fox's 67-year-old single-season Red Sox record. He walked off games with a grin, pointed to the sky for his mother, and brought joy to a city that had long forgotten how to dream. Teammates loved him. Opponents respected him. Fans worshipped him. He wasn't just a slugger, he was a leader. A clubhouse cornerstone. The kind of teammate who would laugh with you during a hot streak and pick you up during a slump. When asked about his attitude, Ortiz once said, "I'm an easy person to get along with. Even when I struggle, I have the same attitude." And through it all, he delivered. When the Red Sox won another championship in 2007, Ortiz was right in the middle of it. He hit .370 in that postseason with 3 home runs and 10 RBIs, driving in clutch runs and celebrating like it was the first time all over again. He and Manny Ramirez hit back-to-back home runs in Game 3 of the ALDS, a moment that perfectly encapsulated the Manny and Papi era. And the thing was, it never got old. Because for David Ortiz, baseball was never just a job. It was a gift. Behind the scenes, life was changing too. In 2002, Ortiz had tragically lost his mother, Angela Rosa Arias, in a car accident. He would later say that every home run he hit, every point to the sky, was for her. Her photo hung in his locker. Her memory lived in every swing. As he once told Innocent, "To me, I think she never left. You know, that's how I feel. I feel like I always have her around me." In interviews, you could hear the gratitude in his voice, the humility, the understanding that none of this was guaranteed. "I come from nothing," he once said, "so every day I'm thankful." Even as superstardom took hold, he never lost his grounding. He established the David Ortiz Children's Fund in 2005, which provides essential support for children in the Dominican Republic and New England who need critical cardiac services. He hosted charity golf tournaments. He visited children's hospitals. He spoke with emotion, laughed from the gut, and hugged like he meant it. By the time the 2010s arrived, Ortiz had become something even greater than a legend. He was a symbol of joy, of resilience, of home. And in 2013, when his city was shaken to its core, that symbol would matter more than ever. Chapter 6. This is our fucking city. April 15, 2013, began like any other Patriots day in Boston. There was baseball. There was sunshine. There was the Boston Marathon. But at 2:49 p.m., everything changed. 2 bombs exploded near the marathon finish line. 3 lives were lost. Over 250 people were injured. And the soul of the city was shaken. In the days that followed, Boston was quiet. Afraid. The Red Sox postponed games. The streets emptied. And as police combed neighborhoods and national news flooded in, a city waited, grieving, watching, hoping. Then 5 days later, Fenway Park reopened. The atmosphere was somber and emotional. Fans and players alike felt the weight of the tragedy. It wasn't just about baseball anymore. It was about reclaiming space, reclaiming identity, finding strength again. Before the first pitch, a group of first responders and survivors stood near the mound. And with them, David Ortiz. He stepped forward in his Red Sox jersey. No teleprompter. No rehearsed lines. Just heart. "This is our fucking city," he said into the mic, his voice steady but full of raw emotion. "And nobody's going to dictate our freedom. Stay strong." Fenway erupted. TV networks let it air, unedited. Even the FCC later issued a rare statement saying they would not find the broadcast. As the Boston Globe's Dan Shaughnessy later wrote, in a single speech, Ortiz managed to capture the spirit of an entire city, turning a moment of grief into a rally cry for defiance. In that moment, Big Papi wasn't just the face of the team. He was the voice of a city. The Red Sox carried that spirit with them all season. They wore Boston Strong patches on their jerseys. They visited victims. They played with urgency and purpose. Ortiz, now 37 years old, had one of the most powerful seasons of his career. He hit .309 with 30 home runs and 103 RBIs, tying Ted Williams's club record with his 7th 100 RBI season. He was once again the emotional engine of the team, but it was the postseason where he became something more. In the ALCS against Detroit, Game 2 became legend. Boston trailed 5-1 in the 8th inning with the bases loaded. The Tigers brought in closer Joaquin Benoit, a fearsome right-hander, to face the Red Sox's biggest threat. Ortiz came to bat. He swung and crushed a game-tying grand slam over the right field wall. As the ball disappeared, Tigers outfielder Torrey Hunter flipped over the fence and into the Red Sox bullpen. And in an instant, a photo became iconic. Boston police officer Steve Horgan, working in the bullpen, celebrated with his arms raised in triumph. The two men, a player and a first responder, were forever linked in a moment of pure, unbridled joy and defiance. Ortiz had done it again. The Red Sox rolled through the series and into the World Series, facing the St. Louis Cardinals. And in that fall classic, Big Papi was unstoppable. He hit .688 for the series with 11 hits, 2 home runs, and 6 RBIs. He reached base in 19 of his 25 plate appearances, giving him an on-base percentage of .760, one of the highest in World Series history. By Game 6, the Cardinals had given up trying to pitch to him, walking him a record 4 times in the game. He scored twice. And when the final out was recorded, a routine grounder to second base, and the Red Sox were champions again, this time at home in Fenway for the first time in 95 years, it was Ortiz at the center once more. He was named World Series MVP, and as champagne sprayed and confetti rained down, Boston didn't just celebrate a title. They celebrated their healing. David Ortiz had helped a team win. He had helped the city find its footing again. He gave people hope and something to cheer for when they needed it most. This wasn't just about baseball. This was about home. Chapter 7, the final chapter. Farewell to a legend. By 2016, David Ortiz had nothing left to prove. He had reversed a curse. He had lifted 3 World Series trophies. He had become one of the most beloved athletes in Boston history, perhaps the most beloved. And yet, in his final season, at 40 years old, Big Papi was still dominant. It wasn't a farewell tour filled with quiet curtain calls and nostalgia. It was a final act that rivaled anything he had done before. Ortiz led the majors in slugging percentage, .620, and OPS, 1.021. He hit 38 home runs. He drove in 127 runs, tying his career high. In doing so, he became the oldest player in MLB history to hit 30-plus home runs and 100-plus RBIs in a single season. As Red Sox teammate Dustin Pedroia said, "What he's doing is unheard of. It's a joke. It's a joke." And every stadium he visited, every fan base, even Yankee fans, stood and cheered. They knew what he meant, not just to Boston, but to the game. On October 10, 2016, Ortiz played his final game, Game 3 of the ALDS at Fenway Park. The Red Sox lost that night and were eliminated, but after the game, something remarkable happened. The crowd refused to leave. As the theme from The Natural played over the loudspeakers, Ortiz walked back onto the field alone, tears in his eyes. He raised his arms, saluting the city one last time. Fans chanted his name, "We're not leaving," as if trying to hold on to the moment, as if refusing to say goodbye. When I walked to the mound, Ortiz later said, I realized that it was over. It was pretty much probably the last time as a player walking in front of a crowd. And the emotion came back out again. Retirement didn't mean silence. In the years that followed, Ortiz became a familiar face on television. A charismatic analyst, always laughing, always candid. He leaned into business, into charity, into storytelling. But life still had one more trial waiting. On June 9, 2019, while visiting the Dominican Republic, Ortiz was shot in the back in a nightclub. A horrifying case of mistaken identity, according to investigators. He was airlifted to Boston and underwent multiple surgeries, with fans across the world holding their breath. He survived. And when he returned to Fenway later that season, thinner, slower, but alive, he stood on the field and looked out once more. "I want to thank all of you for all the prayers," he said. "I am so happy to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for the love. I just want to say to all of you, thank you for everything, and I love you all." It was a miracle and a reminder. Even in retirement, Ortiz remained what he had always been, a fighter, a symbol, Boston strong. In 2022, David Ortiz received baseball's greatest honor. With 77.9% of the vote, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. The kid from Santo Domingo, the throw-in traded for a fading third baseman. The backup DH who became the face of a city, now stood in Cooperstown. "This game is my life," he said that day with his children by his side. "It gave me everything. I tried to give it everything I had in return. I want to thank God for giving me the opportunity to be here and for making me a Hall of Famer." And so, the story of Big Papi ends not with a bat but with a legacy of clutch hits, of championships, of joy, of laughter, of defiance, of love, of healing a city, of becoming something bigger than sport. David Ortiz didn't just play baseball. He gave people a reason to believe, and that never retires. Now, the lights are low, the ballpark is quiet, and the echo of Big Papi's swing fades softly into the night. You've just traveled through the life of a man who turned pain into purpose, who turned doubt into greatness, who turned a cursed city into a kingdom. From the dusty fields of Santo Domingo to the deafening cheers of Fenway Park, David Ortiz didn't just leave a mark. He left a legacy of joy, of clutch, of compassion, of home. He reminded us that legends don't have to be loud, that strength can look like a smile, a point to the sky, or a voice saying, "This is our city." So tonight, let that story stay with you. Let it carry you gently into dreams, where curses are broken, where heroes rise, and where hope always finds a way. Good night, and thank you for listening to Sports Stories to Fall Asleep.